I have this personal goal of mine that I have every single year where I essentially do a loan for free for a family. So I'll take no commission to get it as low as possible for them.
Welcome to the MLO Podcast. My guest today is the man, the myth, the legend, Mik Molina. He has his own podcast. I'll let him tell a little bit about that a little later. But before we begin on the MLO Podcast, every guest starts with a present.
I thought I was supposed to give you a present. Like, what the hell is this?
No, you're welcome. You got the official. I'll let him figure this out. He gets the official MLO Podcast merch. So pick up your merch, and we're excited. Every guest gets the official MLO Podcast.
When I'm having a rough day, nobody knows what's in here, right?
Right. So what does TRID stand for?
TRID?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Well, in my world, with this tumbler, it stands for the reason I drink. So that's TRID, what TRID stands for. So we're going to be making sure that gets the good use. All right. So Mik, tell us about, I guess I've asked a couple questions around to some of our, fellow folks that support us, and they want to ask you one question. What do you love about being an MLO?
Well, what do I love about the mortgage business in general, I would say? Because being a loan officer, I think it's just very, the introduction to the mortgage industry. But what I love about being a loan officer is essentially being able to help people fulfill their dreams of home ownership. So a lot of my marketing, or a lot of what I speak about, is about increasing democracy in housing, really, and helping first-time home buyers accomplish that through different avenues, helping them with cash to close, helping them understand that financial freedom starts when you purchase your first home. Mm-hmm. That's where a lot of your wealth starts, and a lot of millionaires make their millions of dollars through real estate. So ideally, the introduction to real estate on the loan officer level, as opposed to Realtor, where that's where I was before, I'm able to understand a little bit more numbers-wise and educate the clients that way. So ideally, what I love about my job as a loan officer is introducing people to home ownership and having the power to be able to do so and be creative in that aspect too.
Sure. So I appreciate you sharing about. So it sounds like you're passionate about home ownership.
Yes.
Now, how have you getting down? So I guess since it's the MLO Podcast, we're going to get into a little bit of the weeds on this. How have you deployed your passion? Is there any real world examples you could cite that says, hey, this is how I turned my passion into a home, or this is how I helped this customer? Perhaps you can go down what's the most memorable story of a life that you changed.
Yeah. Great question. So ideally, well, first and foremost, I'm part of multiple different organizations, right, that can push for and empower for democracy in housing. NAREB being one of them, YRD, the Young Realtors Division, being an attachment to NAREB as well. And ideally, to go back to your question, is what have I done, or if there's a story. I have this personal goal of mine that I have every single year where I essentially do a loan for free for a family. So I'll take no commission to get it as low as possible for them to be able to get them into a home, especially when they're tight on cash to close. So I do that every single year. Last year, I think I did 2, but every single year since I started, I'll take a deal. And it's just random. It just depends on the situation of the person and everything like that. Hey, I'll do this loan for free for you, just so you can get into your home.
Where did that come from?
That's just me, I guess. It came from understanding how important it is to grow up in one home, I think, and not have to live in different cities or different states like how I was. I didn't have one specific place that I called home, not even as a long-term renter. I didn't really grow up with much, and every single year we were moving across Miami. I had different schools that I went to, and so on and so forth. So I think it's very, very important. Stabilization for a child and for a family is key. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
So let's go back there in your youth. When you're going from house to house, was it that, rents were too high? Was it an affordability issue? Was it, lost your job? Can you speak?
My parents just had children too young. They weren't responsible at that time, so to speak. My mom had me when she was 15. My dad was 18 at the time.
Wow.
So they learned very, very young, but ideally they also weren't stable themselves. So kind of see that as I progressed in my childhood, where I had multiple different elementary schools that I went to, multiple different middle schools and high schools. And at some point, didn't even live with my parents. Actually, lived with my aunt because they couldn't afford to take care of us. So I think it was just the circumstances, right? Of the timing of when I was born and how I came about. But you look at the spot or where you get to in life, and you look back and you say, I probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for all these lessons that I was forced to learn.
So would you say you grew up early?
Oh, yeah. I was the oldest one. I have two younger brothers. I essentially raised both of them. So, yeah.
Wow. So you became like the man of the house early on. Like, what's the age separation between your brothers?
My middle brother is 24, 25, and then the youngest one is 23 this year.
And you're?
31.
Yeah, it doesn't look great for 31. So I appreciate you sharing that. And, so you grew up as a man. When did you get your first job? When was your first job? Or it sounds like you had to grow up early, as I mentioned before.
Yeah. I started doing stuff on the side for my uncle, who eventually ended up actually officially working for him and with him. I think when I was 15, 16, I helped him create his first website before Squarespace, before all of these different easy website providers were out there. It was, you actually really needed to understand how to make a website. So we did that. I helped him do that on the side, and then eventually ended up starting working for him with his company.
And when we were talking before our podcast, before we got on set, you mentioned that that's what seeded your entrepreneurial spirit in terms of working for your uncle on the online store. Can you, map that out for us from that experience to the next experience as it kind of trickles into you becoming wherever you go? You also mentioned on the intro that you're a realtor. So at some point, so lead us through that, that maturation through your personal experience as you look to make yourself to landing on the MLO podcast. How do we get there?
My greatest achievement. No. So I started working with my uncle with his online store before Amazon was big, and things like that. I think it was around 2012, 2013-ish. And I did that for a while with him. I learned he sold actually light bulbs online. That's what he did.
Wow.
Retail, basically light bulbs. I can name all of the fluorescents, but ideally, I learned how to kind of run his business for him, because that was something where he was able to kind of take a step back. I did that. He went on and did some other business ventures where he opened up a restaurant. We'll kind of lead into that, but I ran that online business for him for quite some time, and then eventually I got to the point where I felt like I outgrew that, because I wanted to get paid more and different things that I wanted to do. So I ended up going with I spoke to him about it ahead of time, and then I ended up going with one of the distributors that we would buy from. It was one of the national distributors, and they had different locations around the U.S. and ended up working for them. And I landed the job on my first interview just because they knew that I knew my stuff.
Sure.
When it came to light bulbs, and that job was honestly fantastic. I mean, they had a chef that cooked lunch every single day, so you didn't have to pay for lunch. They allowed us to go to the gym for 30 minutes every single day that they had there at the warehouse, and exercise, and I would do that consistently, and it was a good job. It felt like a corporate forever type of thing. And then around that time, I was also talking to a friend of mine lived across the street. His name is actually, he's a commissioner for Hialeah, Oscar De La Rosa. And his dad is actually, or his father-in-law, I would say, is the mayor, still. But he had gotten his real estate license. And we were having conversations. And I was like, yeah, this freaking guy can do it. This guy can do it. No shade to Oscar because he's a very smart guy. But
Oscar, if you're out there, you see your boy right here.
So that was my thought process with it. I ended up getting my license, wasn't doing too much, and found out my first son was going to be born. And my childhood kind of came back to life, right? What I want to give my son more than what I had growing up.
Sure.
So I started to do the numbers in my head. Okay, if I start now, by the time he's 3 or 4, I should be successful. And right, you give yourself engaged for 4 or 5 years. That kind of came into fruition where I left that job with some savings. I already had my real estate license, and I just kind of dove right into real estate as a realtor. And I had a supportive broker. He was much smaller, so he didn't have the bells and whistles that Remax or Bell Williams or anything would have. But he did pay attention to his agents, and me wanting to grow and me wanting somebody with the experience. I needed that one-on-one more than I needed the tools at the time. So I ended up going with him. He taught me, a lot. Go into the office, make phone calls that I need to make. I did a lot of pre-foreclosure calls with him. But when I left that job, while I was kind of trying to start my real estate career, my uncle calls me again, and he says, "Hey, me and your other uncle, or your uncle from New York, which my other uncle, are going to be opening up a restaurant / nightclub here in Miami. But I have my businesses. He's up in New York. We need somebody to help run it on a day-to-day."
Gotcha.
And I know that, you're no longer working at JB. I know you're trying to start your real estate business and stuff like that. We just need you to be able to come in as a minority partner, run the day-to-day stuff, run real estate through the restaurant, like to make your calls and stuff to the restaurant. I said, okay, cool. Absolutely. I trust you. You've been in the real estate industry. In the restaurant industry for quite some time. Uncle in New York, very successful nightclubs up there, up in Washington Heights. I said, perfect. Got in and says, okay, we need you to come in with $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, $10,000 was all I had saved up. I left my job.
I got you.
So I said, okay, I got it. I'm in.
You went all in.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Some people wouldn't have the guts to do that.
I know. But my problem is I don't say no to anything. That's my problem.
We can explore that for sure.
So I jump in and I start to learn the restaurant business, but I'm with people that I trust, that it's family. And within the first couple of weeks, you can kind of just tell that it's not going to work out. They have their two differences. They think completely different when it comes to business. One of them is completely focused on the nightclub because the income that you get from alcohol is quite the return on investment is much more than on restaurant and plating food and things of that nature. So, but the other one was passionate about the restaurant. So kind of differences. I was doing that for 6 months, and it was very, very difficult to deal with not only family, but multiple business partners that were family. So during that time, I luckily was still doing my calls as an agent and following up with people and doing stuff that I needed to do. And after the restaurant, I left the restaurant like on the end of the year, like December. And I had one closing from my friend that I had known since elementary school that we kept in contact. And his house closed, or his apartment closed a couple of days after Christmas. So I was able to get people Christmas gifts after Christmas. That was kind of like my lowest point.
It's absolutely a blessing.
Yeah.
Considering you've been in for 10,000 and then here you are, you got that.
I didn't make $1 off that restaurant. I destroy my credit cards. To this day, when you pull somebody's credit, you see the grades. Like, the only grade that I have is a 30-day, 30 days from the credit cards that I had at the time.
The restaurant era.
Yeah. The restaurant. So I ended up starting to get the ball rolling as an agent because I consistently was making those calls. And then the same broker that I had, he had a loan officer in-house. His name is Angelo. Angelo's now a good friend of mine. Angelo realized, as the me as an agent, I guess with him dealing with other real estate agents, that I understood the mortgage side much better than others, and could break down the numbers and explain them to the client and stuff. So he was like, "Hey, you're actually really good at mortgages. Have you ever thought about it?" And I had just really started understanding what a loan officer was. And I think this is why it's very important to teach people at a young age about the different avenues of real estate. That's a completely different conversation. So ideally, I said, yeah, sure, right? Because I don't say no to anything.
Right.
I'll check it out. And he invites me to his office and to meet his branch manager. His branch manager was Leo. And that was the first time I met Leo, and just started to have a conversation. Like, why do you think you can do this? And I'm just like, oh, I like numbers. I've always been good at math, right? You don't know what kind of goes into it.
Yeah.
I like numbers. I know I'm very analytical. I know how to solve issues and things like that. Okay, cool. I continue with my real estate stuff, obviously, because one, I need to catch up on bills. I'm behind. I have a newborn baby. I can't forget that.
Right.
I have a girlfriend she was my girlfriend at the time. Now that she's kind of seeing the struggles that we've gone through, the restaurant, ever since I left my job, it's just been pain point after pain point after pain point. It's been about, almost 2 years already. So I continue to do what I need to do, and he continues to try to convince me. Angela every day calls me, "Hey, get your license, get your license." And I told him, like, I'm struggling right now. I can't just jump and get into a new industry.
Right.
I have nothing.
Right.
I have my family. If I tell my girl this, she's gonna just dump me and move on. So after a while, he kept drilling it into me, and I was on the fence. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. And he goes, you know what? I remember pulling up to a parking lot one day. He's like, no, worst case, man, you get your license. You'll succeed. Good job at the bank. I get $65,000, $70,000 a year. You'll be good. That's worst case. Angelo, if you know Angelo, that's the way that he talks. He just tries to make everything seem all right. Right. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not sure. I'm not confident having that conversation with my girl because I don't know how it's going to turn out. Fast forward, he invites me again to the office, and this time he says, my regional manager is going to be in the office. Why don't you stop by?
Right.
He wants to meet you. And I'm like, all right, sure. I wake up that morning and I remember, clear as day, I woke up, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I continually doing this? I don't even want to be a law officer. Like, I'm fine. I'm closing a deal a month as an agent.
Right.
And I'm starting to kind of pick up in my business. Why am I going to start to pivot again and do something else?
Sure.
And so I go into the meeting, and this guy starts to drill me. Like, why do you think that you would be able to be, successful in this business? Why would you want to enter? What do you think differentiates you from any other from the thousands of loan officers that I've interviewed?
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know. It's like absolutely nothing. There's people that talk and there's people that do. And you seem like somebody that's just going to talk. This is a very difficult industry. This is the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's harder than the restaurant that you just described to me. It's a very taxing business. And at that point, look at him and I'm like, you know what? F you.
Right.
I know I can do this.
Right.
You're not going to tell me what to do. And in hindsight, I knew that was what he was trying to do, trying to see if I would fold or if I would kind of just be the competitive person that I am.
Right. Did that stoke that competitive nature? Did that lit a fire?
Yes.
Did that light the fire?
Yes.
Do you have that in the gut, in the belly?
Yes.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
From that moment forward, I kind of something just clicked, and I went all in after that interview where I just completely stopped real estate from one day to the next. And I was in the office every single day as I was trying to get the class and study for my test for the national and everything. It took about a month to go through that. But that whole month, I was just in the office every single day, not on payroll, not getting paid, just learning the systems, trying to understand conversations that people were having. It's like that. And then as soon as I got my license, I kind of just started hitting the ground running and cold calling, and over time just kind of found my lane of what I was comfortable with, which was more so marketing and branding and stuff like that. But yeah, you want to talk about that sparking my competitive nature. Even like 2-3 years after that, while he was still the regional manager, he would come out with numbers every single month for the region of Florida, and he'd say, "Oh, this person did this much this month." And I remember one month he said, looks like Angelo's going to run away with it again. This was like in July. Looks like Angelo's going to run away with it again. And, for the state of Florida, because he was like so far ahead.
Right.
And I looked at that and I'm like, December?
I got you.
Yes. I didn't even respond to the email. December came and I ended up beating out Angelo. I think it was by less than $1 million. I think I hit like 20 something $1 million that year. I emailed him. I attached the email from July and I said, looks like Angelo didn't really run away.
Boom! Mic drop.
So that stuff, I'm very competitive. I'm low key competitive because I don't talk shit, but I will be very petty.
You're like a sniper.
Yeah.
You're like a sniper. You see it, you aim it up, and you pull the trigger when you're ready to pull the trigger. It's good to know. So now as an MLO, now more seasoned, you talk about branding, you talk about, what continues to inspire you. What you mentioned, your competitive in spirit. Now, that's one driver. Is there anything else that drives you in being the best version of yourself as an MLO?
I think being the best version of myself in general, showing up every single day. It starts with my kids. My kids are my wife. My son was the reason why I even quit my job in the first place.
Right.
Right. So there's a couple things. It's never going back to what I came from. That's, one of the main things. It is my kids, my daughter, my son, my family, my wife. And it's also that now I've gotten to a point where not only is it them that depend on me, there's people in the office that depend on me.
Right.
There's people that get paid because of the production that I bring in to help and maneuver through that. So all of that kind of comes to mind where it's like, you can't unfortunately quit. You asked for this and this is what it comes with.
Do you have any hard days where you feel like you want to quit, no matter all that?
Yes.
Considering all those responsibilities, all that, you look in your mirror and what keeps you going? What tells you to not quit? Because it's interesting because a lot of MLOs think that the success is there, and once you're already on the top, there's no longer failure. Mm-hmm. And that you don't want to quit. So it's interesting. I'd like you to explore, those days where they're hard, where there's quitting, and do they still happen? And how do you go overcome it? Is it a mindset? What do you do about it?
You just take it. You literally have to take it a day at a time because there are days that happen. I probably have those once a week, once every other week. Where I'm just like, this is exhausting, but it's tiring. And people don't do what you ask of them to do, whether that be clients, whether that be agents, whether that be your own team members.
Right.
And sometimes it gets frustrating and you do want to quit. But ideally, it's kind of just taking it a day at a time, understanding that you're having a bad day, maybe getting out of the office for that day, not returning phone calls, right? Kind of keeping a level head. Once you get to a certain point in the industry, you will be you are cemented for the future, right? Ideally, whether you may not be as successful if you don't continue to do the daily activities that you should be doing, but you're going to build enough relationships to be able to stay in the industry, especially as a loan officer. And I think that we've gotten to that point, and I feel blessed like that. I know that on my worst days or on my worst months, I'm still going to be okay. And that's probably a big reason too why I continue.
When you define okay, and from an MLO perspective, you mentioned relationships. How did you forge those relationships? How did what do you do to invest in those relationships? How do you keep them, in my household, so we talk about watering the grass. The grass is greener wherever you water it. Mm-hmm. And if you have a ton of agent relationships, how do you water everybody's grass? How do you approach that? Is it a process? Is it a procedure? Do you have staff? How do you make sure that you're top of mind for those agents?
Another great question. So ideally, I approach it is the educational portion of it. We'll have misconceptions about mortgages and guidelines of what goes on in the market, and you may hear something on the news and it's not the case. So ideally, I come from an educational point of view with the agent and kind of coaching them and teaching them. I also had some success as an agent. I've also, because of the amount of time I've been in the industry, I've also seen what it takes to be a successful agent. Mm-hmm. So I coach as much as I can to the agents little by little, ideally, and continue to water and see them grow. I'm not very, very clearly, I may sometimes be too busy, but I'm never transactional. I will be that person And your client will probably be the one where I'm looking. I said, I really care about this client just as much as you do. And because of that, I know they're short cash to close. They can't get it anywhere. This deal's about to die. I'll waive my commission. I'll give them the difference that they need to be able to close this gap for them. Just remember this on the next one and on the next one. A lot of loan officers are very transactional, right? A lot of salespeople, I would say, are very transactional. Hey, I hate when I hear your loan officer do this. Oh, come with me because I can close in 2 days and I have the lowest rate in the industry and I can do this. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand margins for 1 second. You don't understand the mortgage. You don't understand secondary. You don't understand mortgages. You're just talking and you're talking as a salesperson when you're very transactional. And when you become that, you are always going to chase the next transaction as opposed to building relationships and having agents 4, 5, 6, 7 years working with you or even more.
Right. When I hear transactional, I've also heard it from other guests is commodity. You become a commodity. People can use you and throw you out versus being a long-standing relationship. So what I hear from you saying is you continue to add value to your agent partners by educating them. It sounds like you're very deep with them. You go to a deeper level. You go 3 levels down, not just, hey, this deal. And going 3 levels down, it's education. How else do you add value? Is there any other tip that you want to share with any other MLO? How do you, again, staying top of mind? Is it branding? Is it marketing? Using your digital space? How do you kind of look at the mosaic and say, okay, that's the way to get business or build the reputation that you have?
Very simple to what I tell agents, right? Any person that tells you that they're looking to purchase, they will at any point. So what I do is I'll say, even if they know that their credit is not where it needs to be, even if they know that they need to take some steps before that, what they don't know is how to get there. And that's what I'm here for, right? I'm not here when that person's already completely ready to go and push forward. I'm going to go and sit down and have a consultation with them. I'm going to pull credit, even though I know it costs $150 for the company, because ideally that $150 for the company, it in turn turns around to that agent saying, this guy really cares about this client. And now the next client that they get that is a $700,000, $800,000 or $800,000 client is going to come to me because of the way that I treated the client that didn't qualify. And that's where you start to build those relationships because it comes from your referral partners and it comes from the clients and the way that you make them feel. Whenever you go shopping, whenever you have a service of any sort, or you deal with a service of any sort, you remember only 2 different things: how great it was or how terrible it was. You never remember the just okay, right?
That's right.
So you want to always be the one that is remembered by how great it was, and you do that by doing as much as you possibly humanly can for an agent or a client throughout a transaction, even if they don't qualify.
Staying with the non-qualifying, now we're diving into the weeds a little bit. On the non-qualified borrowers, do you create a pipeline of those credit challenge? Do you kind of revisit them like monthly, quarterly? How do you use a CRM to kind of manage that? Because it sounds like to me you have a pipeline of non-qualified borrowers, qualified borrowers, and then you have agents kind of funneling it in. And then I guess from that perspective, you're also raising your brand awareness on the digital side. Back to those clients that are credit challenged, how do you stay on that? Because a lot of loan officers would try to focus on only the credit ready to make their commission and maybe neglect that rather. Yeah. How do you do that?
So, and you're not wrong by doing that, by the way, too, right? Because right now I'm in a position where, I guess it's a good problem to have, but I have so many different clients that it's very difficult for me to continue to cater to the people that you're supposed to be nurturing in a sense, right? Because of the clients that come in on a weekly, monthly basis that we're kind of running credit for, running the scenarios for, because that person that's just starting to apply needs the same amount of attention as that person that had applied already, and we went through the same motion with them, right? It takes your time. So ideally, right now, it's very difficult for me to keep up with those nurture clients. What I would suggest for a loan officer to do is making sure that you have them in a different pipeline and you have your days of the week or the month that you are calling those specific people to kind of see how they're doing and following up with them. Another idea too as well is connecting with a person that is going to, be your credit repair person that you have a good relationship with that can help with the follow-ups. So, and that's usually a very light subject because credit repair is widely known as a very bad service. So picking the right person and connecting with them, ideally, is going to be very, very important.
Absolutely.
But the reason why you do that is more so a strategic thing to understand that that person's going to help with the follow-ups and let you know when when the client is ready to continue to start moving forward. And they kind of work as an assistant for you when it comes to the follow-up if they're good at their job, which is very important.
Yeah. No, 100%. You may have reputational risk too if if they don't perform either. So that's important. I want to explore, do you like having a junior LO work with you? Like there's different strategies whereby you have a bunch of juniors under you working, or there's maybe a bunch of transaction coordinator, loan officer assistants working with you. Having been a sales manager, having been who you are, what do you find is the recipe for success in that managing a pipeline context?
I think the biggest downfall that we have as loan officers is delegation, right? Very similar, and I always bring it back to real estate agents, right? When they have a conversation with you and they say, "Hey, my client called and was asking a question. My client did this," and that for me, nobody knows this, but it's a pet peeve of mine because it is, yes, you ended up bringing in the client, but we've also been servicing it, and it is our client as well. So when you turn it as a relationship thing from a referral partner and a loan officer to my work, your work, you never meet in the middle, right?
Right.
Ideally, you guys are working on this together to get the client to the closing table and to open that up. And I think it's very similar when it comes to loan officers within their teams, right? If somebody messes up, it's, God damn it, you did this, you did that, whatever, and not trusting the delegation process and trusting your team. Whether that's a loan partner, a loan officer assistant, or even a junior, I don't think that there's really much differentiation in that because usually within any of those three, their goal is to become an individual loan officer. So I'm just speaking about them in general as opening up a team and doing a team. I think it's very important to start delegating early, even when you don't have the volume just yet, so you can learn those delegating skills and continue to grow. And as you grow, you're not capped at some point. That's another thing is that you a loan officer and you don't want to reinvest into your business. So you're going to close as many loans as you possibly can by yourself, and then you're going to hit a service issue where you're not able to service this amount of people. Now is when you're going to start the hiring phase. That hiring phase is going to take time to get that person accustomed to the way that you work, understanding your workflows, how to speak to clients, how your relationship partners are, and then not only them building trust with you as a loan officer, but building trust with your referral partners. So your referral partners can start reaching out to them. Right. And that takes some time. So you're capped at that bad service level over a period of time. So I strongly believe in loan partners and starting to build out that team early. As you know, in your own business, where you're going and how quickly you are, increasing your sales, your production, and your lead intake.
I got to ask you this question. How much priority do you give calling, outbound, new sales?
Not as much as I should.
That's an honest answer.
Not as much as I should. I've been doing much better to start this year, touching base with people, seeing how they're doing, and having those individual phone calls like I used to. But you always have to kind of mend the basket of your referral partners, right? Kind of continue to make sure that relationship is strong, take them out to lunch, how you do it. Even the ones that don't send you all the business, or not all the business, but the bulk of your business. Because there's realtors that they may do 2-3 deals a year and you're getting all of their deals. That's an agent that's loyal to you, and they deserve the same amount of time that the other agents that only send you, that may still send you 3 but post 10, right? Ideally, when it comes to outbound calls, I think it's very important to continue to bring in agents and have those conversations with them and build out your business, your book of business with your referral partners. Ideally, right now, I don't do it as much as I want to, but you try to carve out at least an hour a day to call agents.
It's interesting. Some of the folks on the podcast are like, an hour? Where am I going to find an hour? and your response to that comment would be, if I can't find an hour, what would be your response to that?
That's nonsense. Everybody finds an hour. I mean, you prioritize. You have time for anything you prioritize. Bottom line, it doesn't matter what it is. You have time to go to the gym in the morning for an hour, and that's very important. You have time to go over your pipeline with your processor. You have time to go ahead and call clients back. You have time. It's just what your priority is set at, and opening that up. Insert the time for outbound calls. It's not about I don't have the time for it. You realistically just don't prioritize it. Once you start to prioritize it, you'll have time.
And what if someone was scared? What if it's a new loan officer and they were scared to pick up the phone? They didn't have anything, or they're green Mike. He picked up the phone, and what does he say? What does he do? Where does he go? Because some of our MLOs are new and watching this podcast going, they're learning from you and say, okay, the mindset stuff you're speaking about, the tenacity of calling, but they may be just afraid. They may be afraid of rejection. How do you overcome those fears?
You have to be okay with getting with the no. You have to almost expect that you're going to get the no, because the more no's that you get, just data statistically speaking, brings you that much closer to the yes. So a lot of us have call reluctance because we're scared about, this person's going to tell us no, they're going to hang up on us, they're going to scream at us.
Right.
It doesn't matter. If you have people that depend on you, your family, your kids, your wife, whoever, your mother, your father, they depend on you. That person saying no means that you just have to pick up the call and make one more phone call, because you got to bring something back home to your family, and you have to be able to provide for them. So the call reluctance, the way that I personally got around it is I built up my marketing and my branding, and I would essentially as I learned the mortgage business and I learned something new, I would regurgitate it out to agents, and I would send it out and daily emails. I would do daily video emails and continue to do that. And so now the next day when I'm picking up the phone, I'm looking at everybody that opened up my email and strategically calling them as if I'm calling as a cold call, knowing that they know who I am. So, hey, my name is Mike. I'm calling from so-and-so bank. Just wanted to call, introduce myself, let you know that, over here we have different products and programs to help you. Yeah, I know exactly who you are. I get your emails all the time. How you doing? Glad you gave me a call. I actually have this client that went so, right? So now that you open that up from being a cold call to a warm call, and you do that by marketing and branding and being very strategic with your marketing plan.
You dropped a massive nugget and you don't even realize it, right? So what I gathered, folks, is a brilliant tip. The massive nugget was he sends a trackable email that can track opens and then call the people that opens. It's no longer a cold call. Now it's a warm call, because now you're putting a voice with the name and you're physically calling them. Absolutely brilliant. So, for those of you that are perhaps reluctant, there's platforms out there, that would be able to allow you to do that and track that. So I think that's a 1.0 way of just getting over the hill. I'm going to email somebody out. I'm going to pick them up. Now, if nobody opened up your email, then you know what? Pick up the phone, right? Mm-hmm. Pick up the phone and call one of those agents, right? So
yeah, if they haven't picked up your email, regardless if you've been doing this for months already, they've seen your email and they've seen your name.
Right.
So it's just about just doing it. Being okay with the no, I think, is very, very important. It's sales. You're going to get way more no's than you're going to get yes. Nobody bats on it.
All right. So now, to wrap up our podcast, I want to go here. I'm going to call it like a social media ninja. You're pretty good at that stuff, from social media to branding and that kind of stuff. What tips would you give to any MLOs who perhaps are scared or older in the industry, or perhaps the young crowds coming in? Could you bridge both in terms of, if I was an older, more established loan officer and a younger, newer, not as established loan officer, perhaps what tips would you give either party? How would you advise them to take that next step into the branding space, into the marketing space, and everything else that comes with it being an MLO?
Yeah. So for the older ones, right? Well, for both, it's about just repetition. Continuing to do the same thing over and over again. You will start to perfect those videos over time, right? And you're the biggest critic of yourself. So ideally, you make a video, you're going to say, oh, my voice sounds stupid. This looks good. I did this. But one, there's a lot of AI things that'll clip your videos for you. So it removes all of that now, right? But then two, also people, especially the older people in the industry, so many things and are very, very knowledgeable because of the amount of time you've had in this industry that people just want to hear your advice. Like that's what we don't think about. People really want to hear from a professional that is being genuine and not trying to sell the course, even though they have no experience in that field at all. Right. So I think for the older people, it's just that understanding and leaning into your knowledge base, because then, you and I can have a conversation about mortgages for hours, and we can just literally talk about breaking down secondary market, warehouse investors, all that stuff. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people that are have experience in the industry can do the same thing.
Sure.
For the younger loan officer, it is more so on the newer one. It's more so just getting your name out there consistently. And I'm not the greatest when it comes to social media. There's a lot of loan officers and agents that are really, really good at their marketing, their branding, and they lean on that very heavily. But it's just getting your name out there. And as a newer agent or a newer loan officer, what you can do is, as you start to get those videos out and you get the feedback, people that follow you, that are realtors or that like your videos, what I used to do when I first started was ideally I would reach out to them and say, hey, thank you so much for following. Thank you so much for following. I would love to introduce myself. My name is Mike, and we should go have coffee sometime. And a lot of times that works because they've already essentially subconsciously committed to you by following you. It's something so weird when it comes to humans, but now they feel like, okay, they're following you because they like the content that you put out.
Right.
And daily you're starting to build that trust. So you ask them for coffee, it's probably like, yeah, this guy is cool. So you do that, you'll have a better chance of getting the yes.
So you slide. So again, nugget number 2, you slide it. So you post content, someone, perhaps an agent, you start to follow an agent, the agent follows you back. You slide into the DM and says, thanks for following me. And then you proceed to perhaps book a coffee appointment. Mm-hmm. That's pretty ninja. Like I mentioned, I opened that one, right? So Mike, I appreciate that. I mean, you and I can talk for days, as you mentioned, on the MLO podcast, I thank you for being being a guest on our podcast. And I'm excited to see and track your future. I'm really excited to see, what comes of this and where you're going with your team. Would you mind if I have you back on the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right. See you out there, MLOs. Check our next episode. We have an awesome next guest. I'm dropping a little nugget that you won't want to miss. See ya.